You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Hello, hello, and welcome out there in podcast land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, a podcast where two friends get together. We discuss horror, science fiction, films, television, sometimes literature, the key influences on those particular films, and the things that they have influenced. If you are just joining us for the first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. Hopefully you'll like it. You'll tell all your friends. You'll click like and subscribe and share and all that fun stuff. And if you're joining us again, welcome back, as Mr. Cotter used to say. My name is David. I'm here with my good friend Tim. Hey, Tim. How
Mr.
are you?
Mr. Cotter.
Mr. Cotter. Oh, Mr. Cotter.
Hello, David.
What have you been doing?
Oh my gosh. Well, my hair turned blue, so I did that.
It's kind of turquoise a bit.
Yeah, it's a little aqua.
Yes.
But as far as my genre week,
yes.
I caught, if you remember a few weeks back, I can't remember what episode, it may have been the last episode. I mentioned a movie called His House that was about Sudanese refugees
Yes,
they go to England and they're in a tenement house that's haunted. And I was telling you how strong. Yeah, it's a strong movie on multiple levels. And I caught something that could easily be somewhat of a sister movie called Under the Shadow. And it is set in Iran. It's a Persian language film, but it's actually was also filmed in the UK. So I'm not really sure. The director was named Babak Anvari, so I'm assuming he's Middle Eastern. And it deals with people of Iran living in terror because they're in conflict, and so some of the scares from this movie aren't necessarily supernatural. All of a sudden, like an air raid siren will go off and they all have to run and go to the basement because they're being bombed, that kind of thing.
So it's more like real life horror.
Right. So you've got multiple levels of horror in this movie too. And it's really strange because it reminded me of that episode Bomb of The Young Ones, where they go downstairs in the kitchen and there's a undetonated bomb in their kitchen. Well, there's an undetonated bomb stuck in the roof of this building where these people live. And
that created the Maximov twins, right? I mean,
there you go. Yeah, so, Wanda and Pietro.
Pietro. Yeah.
Anyway, it sets off a chain of events that brings this. It's, I guess, their version of a malevolent spirit called a jinn, J-I-N. And truly scary in places. This movie rated very highly on Rotten Tomatoes as well. And I was like pretty scared while I was watching it. I would recommend it, but I would not recommend it more than I would His House. I liked His House better. But it is definitely a very good film by a relatively unknown director. He did one other movie, I think, called Wounds with Armie Hammer, and then he is doing Monsterland on Hulu now, which is a television series, or he's done an episode. So it's just like the Iranian vampire thing I watched last season. All these guys are like up and coming, so they really haven't done a lot yet. They're like voices or visions to look out for. So
interesting. Interesting. We'll talk about voices and visions later. But my world, well, two things. One, I finally finished Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I always want to say Falcon and the Snowman.
The Winter Snowman.
The Winter Snowman.
I'm glad I have not even started it, but I really want to.
You should. I do think it's probably the lesser of all the Marvels put together, but it does have some really unique things to it. But it's You know how WandaVision was so kind of mysterious and kind of led you through it in a really artsy kind of way, and then got extremely emotional the more you got into the story.
The grief stuff, yeah.
Yeah, this kind of starts out with all the grief and the pain, and then turns into much more of a buddy movie. And I think it gets really heavy-handed in places, and I didn't like some of the writing, and that's very unusual for a Marvel film, in my opinion. I like a lot of the writing that Marvel does.
Do we know who handled this as far as like direction?
No, I
don't.
And writing? I probably should do some research on who did this one. I know it wasn't the same couple that did WandaVision, because that's what they didn't do it. But and you know, I've always liked Sam. I think Sam's a great character. He was introduced in my favorite Marvel movie, which is, you know, Winter Soldier. And I like the guy who plays Bucky, and I like Bucky and Winter Soldier. It's just that their pairing
Sebastian
is kind of like,
Stan.
Yeah, their pairing is kind of like such a standard. You're the grumpy one and you're the funny, quippy one, kind of police procedural. And it doesn't work for me. It kept seeming really kind of old school and cliche. Yeah. But anyway, I'd love for you to watch it and see what you think.
Yeah.
And then the other one, I did your kind of thing where I was just kind of said, I'm going to sit down and watch something, whatever is going to speak to me, sort of thing, whether it's an Iranian vampire or a Middle Eastern jinn or whatever. And,
oh my gosh, it's going to be a Yugoslavian space opera.
No, ironically, I stumbled upon Leviathan, which I had watched years and years and years ago when it came out, and thought, you know, I seem to remember this as being pretty sucky. Maybe I should watch it again and see. And
is it Corman? Or is that Deep Star 6?
That was Deep Star 6, I'm pretty sure. This is wait, I actually took some notes. Let me see if I can find them.
It wasn't Empire, was it? Because Empire is Corman.
This is Dino De Laurentiis. It was directed
Come here,
by
let me give you some money, make scary movie.
It was directed by George Cosmatos, who did a lot in that era. You know,
he's the guy I talked about him not long ago doing something.
Yeah,
that I watched. I can't remember what it was.
And it had just an incredible cast. I mean, it's Peter Weller, Amanda Pays, Ernie Hudson from Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Meg Foster, the woman that I always thought was possessed because of her eyes.
She's great. She's awesome. I saw her in something not long ago and I recognized her. Lisa
Eilbacher, Richard Crenna is like one of the leads in it. Hector Elizondo is in it. Daniel Stern from Home Alone. It had a really good cast, incredible, just great production design, because it turns out it was designed by Ron Cobb, who did all the designs. David Peebles did the original story, and Stan Winston did all the effects. So huge pedigree going into this, and that movie sucked so bad. It was just so very, very badly scripted.
Okay, I remember what it was. His son directed that Nicolas Cage movie that I watched called
about
Mandy.
Mandy,
the psychedelic vengeance movie. Yes.
Yeah.
Because the one that you watched was directed by a guy that also did a lot of Stallone movies. His dad did Cobra and stuff. Yeah.
He was the pseudo action guy, you know, in I think the 90s or
80s.
Whatever.
Yeah.
80s.
Yeah.
But I love the production design. I love the sets. I love that you got to see Amanda Pays in underwear like 4 different times. That was all great. But the script was so terrible. It was so derivative of Alien, really bad, really, even down to face huggers and everything else. And it was just so flamethrowers. They use flamethrowers to fight the monster. It just made no sense. It just.
I think
You'll
I
also
saw
see a
it
lot
in a
of the
theater.
I may have too, actually, but I know I saw it on VHS.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw it again. I think I hated it and just never watched it again.
And it was, I mean, the creature effects you thought would be good because it's Stan Winston. No, didn't work. It was, I mean, you know,
No
for
money.
those of you who don't know it, the story is it's set in a deep space mining rig, duh, but it's underwater. So it's an underwater mining rig, very, very deep. And they can only wear these pressure suits outside, and because they're so deep. And there's an evil corporation that owns the mining rig that is keeping them down there because they investigate a submerged, sunken ship that no one's ever seen before. And inside it, it has a tainted biological specimen that ends up taking over their bodies.
Is this ice?
Yeah,
The
well, or
X-Files?
the thing. It's just, I mean, it's just so derivative all the way through it. And I was very disappointed. So I said, I don't know if I need to do that anymore. I just need to, or maybe I do, and just I'll come across something like an Iranian gin that I like, but just didn't seem
and
to
it
happen.
was really the effects for it were really cool because it was like a shroud with no tangibility. It would form the shape of a human, just whip into a shape, like a sheet would fly up and just form like a figure. It was really creepy.
So
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump back into my movie. Well, speaking of scary things, I guess we could segue over into our movie of the week, which happens to be in my territory, which is the world of horror. We have never covered a film by this person, but we have talked about him a lot. His name is Ari Aster, and he directed not only a movie called how do you say it?
No, we did Midsommar last year.
No, we didn't. We did Wicker Man, and we talked about Midsommar in Wicker Man, but we didn't do the actual movie Midsommar.
No, we did Midsommar.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, we did. Well, I
have the list.
We did somewhere. So in one of these years, we've done Midsommar. We have done.
We've talked about it a lot. We've never done an Ari Aster film.
What?
He's only got two.
I don't think that's right. I do not think that is what you think it means. I do not know. Why would I watch it unless we were covering it?
Because
I would not be attracted
we both wanted to see it. But we will watch it eventually again.
All right.
Because tonight or today, we are talking about his debut, Hereditary, starring Toni Collette, Gabriel Byrne, and some talented children whose names I don't really know. This movie, I was sick one day, year before last, maybe. And I watched this movie back to back with The Witch, which is directed by Robert Eggers, who's another talented newbie filmmaker.
Very.
And I was not right for the rest of the day after watching both of those movies back to back.
That I could imagine.
I don't even know how to begin with this movie. Both those movies got kind of panned by horror movie fans, but praised by horror movie critics. And I think you and I have talked about this before. I think we're in an age where people don't want slow burn. They want fast and in your face. And this movie is not that at all.
No.
And this movie speaks to me on so many levels of creep. I'm assuming that it was the first time you've seen it. I think you said that.
Yes. I had never seen this movie. I have heard about it several times, of course, through researching for the podcast or talking with you or whatever. And especially after we somehow didn't review Midsommar, but I remember us reviewing Midsommar.
We talked about it a lot because it's very much a key to The Wicker Man, which we did cover.
A good movie. I mean, I love so much about that movie. I did not love so much about this movie, I have to say.
Oh, really?
It did have some moments I liked, but, and again, I've seen The Witch, which I really liked, and you and I have talked about it. It is a slow burn. I think there's you know how, like, here's kind of my equation in the Saw or comparison in the Saw movies, there's a underlying like S&M sadistic
torture porn.
Yeah, the human pain, physical pain is like an underlying thing in this. I think for Ari Aster, emotional pain is the undercurrent. The biggest key I can give this movie, and I'll go ahead and say it right now, the biggest key I got from this movie is this is ordinary people as a horror movie.
In a way, yeah.
It is a family that is falling apart because of grief and things that have happened to them. And to me, that's almost more painful than the horror elements that happen in the last like third of the movie.
I think the perception is that they're falling apart from grief until the last third of the movie, when you realize that this was all organized and set up to begin with.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pawns. That
they were just pawns in this whole thing, all of them, you know, kind of thing. I like, like I said, I like some elements of it. I think Toni Collette is absolutely brilliant in this movie. That is an Oscar-worthy performance.
She's amazing. To me, you know, people are always like Meryl Streep. I'm like, no, Toni Collette. She can do anything.
She can. And I like the fact that she gave it so much depth in places and said some just the writing part. I mean, there were some parts of it that were just horrible things being said. I could not imagine my mother's or my wife, whatever, saying what she's saying. Even though as a parent or as a spouse or whatever, you probably thought them at times, maybe, you know? So it wasn't that so much as the fact that she's saying them out loud. Don't do that, or whatever.
Yeah, that whole speech, and I should do a synopsis quickly before we keep going. But that whole speech at the dinner table, where he makes her come down to eat because he fixed dinner. This is the husband, and then the son is very quiet, and then she just unloads on him. And I mean, the whole time I'm like, holy hell, this cannot get any worse. This cannot get worse. This is horrible. This is horrible, horrible. And then she stops and the son just looks at her and says, what about you? She didn't want to go to the party. It's your fault. And I was like, oh, it's like stick the knife in and just comic, or what is it? Hereditary. Yeah.
Everybody in this movie is in pain of some way. You know, the entire family's in pain. Her friend that she meets at the grief council is in pain. It's a very introspective movie, I think. And I think you have to approach it that way. I think I went into it thinking, everybody's talking about how this is one of the best horror movies in the past like 20 years. And I went, okay, I'm not getting a lot of horror. I'm not even getting a lot of mood at the beginning.
Oh, I got the mood.
I'm getting a lot of grief. I'm getting a lot of pain. I'm getting a lot of great performance and family dynamic, you know, even down to, you know, he lets scenes linger. You know, they're both in bed. We're looking at her in the foreground and the husband in the background, and the husband reaches out and touches her, and just the way she cringes away from it. And then he pulls his hand away, just says volumes, you know, and he lingers on that. And then she gets up to leave and all that.
I'll give you my key. And this is a key I will probably throw out there more than once is The whole time I was watching this, I could not think of anything but Stanley Kubrick. I was like, this movie is so Stanley Kubrick. The long shots, the weird music. It was like he was almost trying to recreate the atmosphere from The Shining and that slow build up to everything falling apart.
Well, I've got that from a visual and pacing standpoint. This is very Shining and very Kubrick.
Right.
He doesn't have the same balance and eye that Kubrick liked. He liked a very symmetrical kind of look to everything. But what he does do is that tiered look. So everything looks like it's in a dollhouse. He puts that crown molding halfway up the walls, which gives everything a really weird, not interesting balance to it. And he frames things in
cinematography and miniatures.
Oh my gosh,
the lens reminds me of Kubrick.
The lensing was amazing. His lens usage, because there were a couple of times where a shot would start and I couldn't tell if it was a dollhouse or not.
Right.
Just because the depth of field was so incredible and so good. And I would go, wait, oh no, that's a doll. That's her mom at the
and the opening after the credits, the opening shot, you see this blue room, and all of a sudden Gabriel Byrne walks into it, and you went, "Whoa! I thought that was a miniature."
Well, what was great was that was again a very Kubrick shot because it started with the view of the cabin, the house where it ends, the little tree house, pulls back and you realize you're looking through a window. Then you see all the doll houses. It pans all the way around, zooms in on a dollhouse, and then suddenly Gabriel Byrne walks in and you're going, that was a great shot. Oh my God.
I know. That's why I thought you would be all over this, nerd-wise.
Oh yeah, his lensing is amazing. The lighting is amazing. There are entire scenes that are just lit with like firelight or candlelight or lights coming from a dollhouse that shouldn't be coming from a dollhouse.
I know. I was like, why is that dollhouse lit up?
Yeah, stuff like that. I thought the overall pace. I was very thrown off at the beginning. It was like I was watching. I just thought about this. There was another movie that came out that was, oh shoot, who directed the original Hulk and did Life of Pi?
It's the guy that did the gay wedding movie too. I know who you're talking about. He did Brokeback Mountain.
Yes. What was his name? Ang Lee.
Yeah.
He did a movie called Ice Storm.
Oh yeah. There's the ice storms all over this too.
Yeah. Which this reminded me of, that dysfunctional family, and you're kind of not really sure who you're supposed to be siding with because you're seeing all the sides. You know, I mean, you could see mom saying, you know, I don't want to deal with my kids right now because I'm not in a good place mentally. So if I can get rid of both of them for a little while, fine, go to the party. But then you also him going, why is she making me take my 10-year-old sister to a freaking high school party?
Right.
And then you could see the other husband going, why would you send a 10-year-old daughter to a party?
I mean, Ari Aster he's described the viewpoint of this movie a lot of different ways, but the one that always sticks with me is that you're seeing through the eyes of the sacrificial lamb that has no idea what's going on. And I was like, wow, that's pretty intense.
Okay, I hadn't thought of that, you know, with that as a subtext. Yeah, I could see that in a lot of places because there were a lot of lingering shots on, what's his name, Peter, the son? What was his name? Lots of lingering on him.
Lots of teary eyes with him. Yeah.
And that actor is really strong. He's really good at playing this kind of vacancy that he kind of has to in places. Times when he's laying in bed and you actually see the reflection of the heat lamp from the treehouse reflected in his eyes. Just
I was blown away by his cinematography. I was just like, this is his first movie? I'm like, I read that he wrote like 16 screenplays. He started writing when he was like a teenager. And he didn't know he was going to be a director. And then he just, all of a sudden, he's got 16 screenplays, and he just started with Hereditary and then did Midsommar. Now, I did read that Hereditary was going to be a family drama until he started realizing that he could easily make it into a horror element. And,
oh yeah.
And he turned it that way. So I like that blend of Ice Storm and Rosemary's Baby, or whatever you want to call the amalgamation of the two together. We've never really seen that. And we saw it with The Shining, where it was a dysfunctional family going into chaos at the end. But at the beginning, I didn't see them as dysfunctional until after the death of the daughter, really. I mean, or the scene where she goes to therapy for grieving her mother, and she starts talking about her family history, and you start going, oh, she's got a dark past. Let me do I'm just going to read this real quick because we haven't done this yet, and people out there are probably thinking, what the fuck are they talking about?
Hopefully they've watched it.
Here's a quick summary of the movie. When her mentally ill mother passes away, Annie, played by Toni Collette, her husband, Gabriel Byrne, the son, Alex Wolff, and daughter, Millie Shapiro, are all mourning her loss. They turn to different means to handle their grief, including Annie and her daughter, both flirting with the supernatural. They each begin to have disturbing otherworldly experiences linked to sinister secrets and emotional trauma that have been passed through generations of their family. So that is Hereditary in a nutshell. What we find out, we really don't find out all the answers until the very end. But there are clues.
Okay. And I'll give you another qualm I have about the movie.
Okay.
First of all, where was Ruth Gordon? No, but anyway, no, there's a voiceover at the end, because again, we are just showing a close-up of Peter as he's literally crowned. And we're hearing Annie's friend, who I forgot her character name, but we're hearing Joan. We're hearing Joan's voiceover, basically a prayer to Payman and telling us the whole plot. Basically,
we look to the west.
Yeah, we looked to the northwest, and we found, give us
restored
wealth and familiars and all this.
Whatever the daughter's name was, I forgot.
And Charlie. Because I thought it was a very gender fluid name, ironically.
It's supposed to
be. But I don't think that was needed. I think that could have been totally done, and we could have just lingered again on that shot of him, and it would have been just as terrifying and just as ambiguous, and as the rest of the film.
Well, and honestly, it's not that ambiguous. There are a few things that are ambiguous, but I agree with you. I would have been totally cool without that voiceover. It's kind of like Blade Runner, not having the narration in Blade Runner.
Right.
But
and it would have gone back to like
they may have made him do it because it was his first movie.
They might have, like the end of The Shining. We didn't need to hear a voiceover of all that. We just need to slowly zoom in on Jack in the painting.
And that's it. But see, Kubrick had clout, and they couldn't tell him what to do.
And that's probably true. I don't know if that was a part of it or not. But it may have been, like you said, some studio executive went, I don't get it. Could you put some in at the end so you explain
test
it all?
Audiences, because audience. Well, I mean, a lot of horror movie fans do not like this movie, and I think it's because they were expecting more modern horror movie.
I agree with that.
The Conjuring or whatever.
I also think there's not a strong. There's a great opening shot
for the other elements that it brings, like the acting, like the writing, like the cinematography. I mean, there's so many components that are so brilliant that, I mean, I can, you and I are movie buffs. We can appreciate it for all of that as well. I think the average horror movie goer doesn't see that.
No, I think they should have had a hook. I think he needed a hook at the beginning other than the obituary. He needed
that's my favorite thing.
Maybe grandma, maybe grandma kills herself, or maybe something odd happens, so that there's a weird horror hook at the beginning
I did it for you, Damien. I did it for you.
Yeah, right. So there's something, because, there's nothing horrific really in this movie until the car ride. Basically nothing. It's moody, but it's not even really scary.
There's clues. I mean, on second viewing, I was seeing shit left and right. I was like, oh my God, how did I not see this? Like that guy that was like grinning at Charlie at the funeral.
Right.
I was like, oh, I don't remember that. and then as soon as she met Joan, I was like, oh yeah. Okay, here's Ruth Gordon right here.
Yeah. Well, I didn't trust Joan from the very beginning. I was going, okay, no, I don't trust.
No,
first of all,
she was too pushy.
First of all, she's the actress is the bad teacher in Handmaid's Tale. She's the mean one.
Okay.
That tortures and punishes everybody. So I didn't trust her to begin with. Gabriel
I love
Byrne
the actress though. I think she's brilliant.
Oh, she's great. She's great.
Yeah.
And Gabriel Byrne is such a milquetoast and nice guy in the whole thing. I said, he's not going to last long. He's got to go.
He does stand up to her when he's trying to protect Alex.
Yeah.
Is that his name, Alex? Peter, excuse me.
Peter's the son.
His real name's Alex. He played Peter. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, even in my notes, I've got, okay, this audio is really weird and seems to be not fit in places, but maybe that's what he wants. Great opening shot. Okay, is it just me, or does the daughter look weird?
She does.
Wow.
She looks like she's got, I don't know, some kind of disability, maybe.
Yeah, that's what she looks like. And then I've got, this is extremely slow. Oh my gosh, I love these miniatures. And then I've got, well, the telephone pole, that was intense now, wasn't it? So,
Well, did you know, like, this is another thing I noticed through the whole, and I never picked up on it the first time, was that Charlie is constantly eating chocolate.
Yes.
And I was like, she has a nut allergy. She knows that, and she eats chocolate all the time. So she knows what to eat. So why did she eat that? I mean, and the minute they get to the party, the first thing you see those girls in the kitchen doing is just chopping up this huge cutting board full of nuts.
Full of nuts. Yeah.
I was like,
there's a little bit of it that's too on the nose. Like, as soon as Gabriel Byrne went, there's no nuts in that, is there? And she goes, no. I went, okay, so she's got a nut allergy.
Right.
That's going to be a part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a little bit too on the nose for me, but I expected her to have an attack. I expected them to go to the hospital, although he's driving in the middle of freaking nowhere and he's going, the hospital's right up here. I'm going, really? The hospital's in the middle of the desert? Because I don't think so.
They're in Utah. But
wherever you are, where the hospital is not near there, you were at a house. So there's got to be, never mind. But then the telephone pole came out of freaking nowhere, literally.
But you saw the symbol on it when they drove by it the first time, right?
And wondered, why are we showing that? Okay, that's the same as the necklace. What does that mean? Okay, all right. So evidently it's all over this town. Oh, and the other little thing they didn't explain, the little names on above everybody's headboard that Grandma had written. I was okay with that. And she's even writing them on the miniatures.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, that's cool. I don't know what it means.
Very cool.
But that was cool. I've got
that's
the
a crazy
in
job
the
she's
nowhere.
got. A miniature artist. She just makes art.
Well, and I think
miniatures.
I mentioned this a lot first season or second season because I love CSI. There was a miniature killer in CSI that was in like.
Was he really small?
5? Yeah, he was wee. No, he would, but he was in like. For 5 seasons, he was have at least one episode. He would come back because they never caught him, kind of thing. And what he would do is he would deliver to Gil a miniature of a crime scene, and then they would end up finding that crime scene. And he would put clues in the miniature that then they could find on the actual crime scene set or in the actual location. It was really creepy.
Oh, cool.
But I loved it because of all the detail of the miniatures. I love miniatures anyway. That's
Yeah,
just,
I do too.
it's really cool when they're done.
What'd you
And
think
hers
of
were
her
great.
miniature of the station or the car and the headless body? of
Yeah,
the
I was
kid?
going, that's when, if I was the husband, I'd go, and I loved his reaction because at first
It was
his whole
great.
face was like that. And then he was like, Jesus, Annie, are you
Yeah.
seriously going to do this? Really? Really? You know, I mean, I love the reaction. I liked his subtle stuff. I liked, okay, grandma's nightgown's a little too see-through in that little backlit miniature shot. That's kind of creepy. And then over here, wait, grandma pulling out her boob for the baby is not a good thing. I'm just saying, doesn't seem to be too normal to me. And if that's what Annie had to grow up with, then yeah, maybe she's got some mommy issues. Okay.
Yeah, and I didn't. I either forgot it or I don't know. I just don't remember it. But like when the first time she goes to that therapy group because she's grieving her mother, and she starts telling her history, and she says her 16-year-old brother killed himself because he swore he was schizophrenic and said my mother was trying to put people into his body. And I was like, wow, okay. That explains a lot of the plot right there.
Wow. Yeah. See, and I didn't catch that when I saw, because I've only seen it once.
Yeah.
So yeah, on second view, that would probably be important. A lot of that stuff.
It
is.
Important. And well, I don't know where to go from there. We haven't really talked about scenes, and one of my favorites was just the beginning of it. I love the shot of the obituary. I thought, what a neat way to start a movie, because the only other movie, and this is a key, I just realized that I can think of that did something similar, is The Big Chill, when they're dressing the corpse. That's the beginning of the movie.
But see, I would have liked that more, and I think it would have been more mysterious than just the written one shot obituary.
See, I thought it was mundane on purpose. But
I don't mind the mundane, you know, again, I would have preferred a hook, but I think the mundaneness was okay for his pacing, but it needed something more tangible, I think, for me to get me into it.
See, I thought we were looking at it from the perspective of Joe Schmo, who sees that it's just another woman that died, no big deal. And then all of a sudden, this is why, you know, what's going on because she died is the rest of the movie.
Yeah. I mean, because basically the outside forces of the cult manipulated them all the way through it. You know.
And I do have a few unanswered questions, but they're the kind that I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt as far as suspension of disbelief, just because I love so much else about the movie. Like, I don't understand the whole her sawing her head off thing up in the rafters. That was like, what? Okay, I get it being a decapitation, but why is she doing it?
That's pretty graphic and scary.
It is. And what I read, and I don't know if this is a cop out, is that once Gabriel Byrne's character, her husband, was dead, she was no longer having to put on a front. She was like totally in the possession or whatever you want to call it. So that's what I'm saying. It's kind of loose. I don't know that I get that as much.
I agree. I had some of those questions too. I mean, they hint at Annie's mom having mental issues, especially in the way she raised her. Then they hint at Annie having issues. She admits she was found in front of her kids, everybody doused in kerosene, and she had a book of matches while she was sleepwalking. Which makes her irrationality once she starts witnessing paranormal stuff even worse for the family,
right? Because no one believes her,
which intensifies her
struggle.
But I didn't know, was the sleepwalking like a part of was sleepwalking like the real Annie, you know what I mean? Or was the waking conscious Annie, or was the sleepwalking possessed Annie, or vice versa? You know what I mean? And was he trying to say that?
You want to know my interpretation? And I have read this, but this was my interpretation before I read it. I think that that's her subconscious trying to protect them when she's asleep. And even when he says, "You're trying to kill me," she says, "I'm trying to protect you."
Yeah. Yep. That's right. So yeah, I would agree. I think that's possible.
It's like she's only got control of herself in her sleep.
I maybe would have liked that explained more than, after the husband dies and we get one again. I think it's a brilliant shot, although it didn't make a lot of logical sense to me, and I started losing it when Peter like sits up in bed and everything else. And if you look close enough, you end up seeing it finally, but she's literally in the corner of the ceiling.
I know.
Of his room.
I was like, what is that?
And I'm going, what? And I like it because I think we all as viewers, he did a great job, because we all as viewers would go, "Oh, Peter. Oh, it's another long shot of Peter. Oh boy, are we just going to keep looking at Peter being, what is that in the corner?" Peter is, wait, that's not, what is that?
Well, he does it multiple times in the movie. He does it also in that same shot with Charlie, and her head falls off and turns into
a ball. Yeah.
But at the very beginning, when Toni Collette's character, I can't think of her name now, Annie, is in her studio, she's turning out the lights, and she sees her mother standing in the corner, and she goes to bed and says, "I just scared myself." She tells Gabriel Byrne that she just scared herself. So he does that a lot, where you're looking, it's almost like Hill House, which I put Bly Manor, but I did not put Hill House, where you all of a sudden, if you look really closely, you see ghosts in the background.
Yeah. Or see something you should be seeing in the background that you aren't, you know, kind of thing. But then it just, to me, then I'm start losing it, because then she like crawl flies through the door, and then later on she's hovering off the rafters, cutting her own head off.
Yeah,
and
that
I'm going,
part was
who is
overboard.
Doing this? Is this Annie trying to kill herself so she can't be manipulated, or is this Payman taking over her, or is because it didn't. In Rosemary's Baby, the whole thing was, we're protecting you, Rosemary, because you have his son inside you. Mm-hmm. Rosemary never acted like she was possessed or anything. You know what I mean? But there's several, Jack, for that matter, in Kubrick's Shining, Jack never acted possessed. He saw hallucinations, we could say, maybe, but we find out they're not. But, but he was never possessed, like in the book, when he literally, or in the new remake, in the new movie, when he becomes possessed, but like Peter bangs his own face on the desk. That's not him doing that. That's somebody else possessing him. When little girl Charlie, when she was cutting the bird's head off and all that stuff, was that Charlie? Or was that she possessed? So I lost a lot of that fragmentation. I didn't know what was happening at the end, other than we're going for now really gory jump scares kind of stuff.
That with the sawing the head off, that's the one that I felt was a little bit extreme as far as like a jump scare. There's a little bit more, I think, in the passage of Payman from Charlie. Apparently Payman was in Charlie, and that was the wrong body, because he wants to be in a male. And I don't know if that's if beheading her is what set everything into motion, but when he's in that classroom, before he smashes his face, there's a shot of him where he's doing this, and his face looks contorted, and he looks like Charlie.
Yeah.
And then that's when he smashes his head into the desk. And he dislocated his jaw, by the way. He was worried about breaking his nose, so they had a soft desk, but apparently the bottom half wasn't soft, and he busted his jaw when he did
The
that.
actor? Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Apparently he had dislocated it before, so it was not a
that's where I kind of lost some of it, because I could tell from what they were giving us that, yes, so Payman is trying to be born. He is trying to come into this world. He needs a male body, screwed up the first time, and Charlie doesn't work for him. So now we need Peter's body, and that's what we're doing. And at the very end, that's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's being created and enchanted and spellbound, so to speak, by the cult, which was led by Grandma and Joan and all of that.
And a bunch of naked people that smile at funerals.
Right.
Yeah.
But I didn't get some of the possession part. It just didn't make sense to me. If Payman's in Peter, then why would he want to bust his own face open? That makes no sense,
Maybe that was Peter fighting.
And if that's Peter fighting back, I didn't see enough of that to know that was what was actually, happening. Yeah. I can understand a book trying to take care of itself, and if you try to burn me, I'll burn you. I understand that. That makes perfect sense to me. I can relate to that. They did it in
Evil Dead.
But why would it set him on fire? Yeah, that was one of my keys, was Evil Dead book. Where's the necklace? You got to throw the necklace.
One too many horror movies. All right. Well, I tell you what, before we go into cast, which we really don't have to because there were no alternative cast members.
But this cast is all great. There's
fantastic.
It really is an excellent cast. Even Charlie, as limited time as she has and everything else, is very, she leaves quite an impression, not just physically, but just the way she does certain scenes and everything is very good.
I agree. Toni Collette, I did not know this, but I read that she did not land a Golden Globe or an Academy Award nomination for this performance, and that it was generally regarded as one of the worst snubs of the year.
I would agree with that.
I agree too, because she is fantastic in this movie. But then again, I like her. I mean, she steals the scene. She has one scene like in The Hours, that movie with Meryl Streep, and she steals that movie just in that one scene. Mm-hmm. But anyway, she speaks very highly of Ari Aster. She has called him the most prepared director she has ever worked with, and praised him for practically having the full movie shot and edited in his head 2 years before he started making it. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Well, it makes sense based on his cinematography. I mean, he knows what he wants.
We mentioned that Gabriel Byrne is in it. He is a great British actor. I'm not sure why he got cast because he's a lot older than her, like 22 years. But he had
it works for
Alex.
It works for him. I can see that. I mean, they look good together.
I thought they did too. And maybe it's just because of his history. I don't know. He had already worked with Alex Wolff playing Alex's father in another movie. So they made a joke that maybe they'll play it in another 7 years. He'll play his dad again because this movie was 7 years apart from the one he had done before. And then Millie Shapiro played Charlie, who when you see her pictures of her outside of this movie, she doesn't look as odd, but she remember we were talking about progenitive disease not too long ago. Progeria. She kind of looks like that to me, like she's a little older than she's supposed to be. I don't know.
Yeah, I could see that.
Anyway, lastly, I just want to mention that the music in this movie was done by Colin Stetson. Ari Aster reached out to him 2 years prior and said, I want you to score this movie because the music is a cast member. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's when I started noticing it this time around in the very beginning with those long Kubrick shots, and you hear that weird noise. It reminded me of that howl sound with the shots at the opening of The Shining going through the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. A lot of this movie reminds me of The Shining. A lot.
Oh yeah, The Shining is a
And
big
music
key
is
for
definitely a
this.
part of it.
Yeah, the
So-
music is really atonal. The music is really cryptic, I guess is a good way to say it, you know, and unnerves you. It's like it's symphonic dissonance almost, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah,
it
I would agree.
accompanies the dread you're already feeling from just
Mhm.
the slow burn, and the music just enhances it even more.
Yeah.
I would say. That is what I have on.
While we're on cast, Gabriel Byrne again. I will always
Mhm.
like Gabriel Byrne because he played Uther in Excalibur.
Oh, okay.
And I thought that was I thought he did a great job in that. And I remember him in Miller's Crossing and a bunch of other movies he was in
Wasn't he in Gothic?
yeah, he was
I
in
think-
Gothic. He was in
yeah.
Usual Suspects.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with Kevin Spacey.
Mhm.
I mean, he's done a lot of really good roles, I think.
He's a great character actor, I guess you would say.
Yeah, I don't think he had. Again, I think he's kind of milk toasty written here, but I don't know how I would have improved that in any way because it has to be really Peter and Annie's movie. You know, Charlie and the dad are really just like
Satellites, yeah.
characters,
I think he came alive a little bit, like in that scene where he calls her and says, "I have to protect my son now." He's basically saying, you know, you're out of control, and she gets pissed and starts screaming at him on the phone and hangs up on him, or he hangs up on her.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he does take a stand for Peter, but it's a little too late.
Well, yeah, but then he comes home and Annie's trashed every miniature she's ever built, so it didn't work.
Well, yeah, but she also sends him up in the attic to find a headless corpse.
True. Yep.
So he's got to think, ooh. But then he looks at her and he says, "You're the one that vandalized that grave. You're the one."
Oh yeah, I knew he was going to do that.
All those movies you're going to see. Ooh. Yeah, I love how everything played out.
Yeah. And that was a great subtext scene too, because I mean, him making the accusation that you were doing all this while you were lying to me, saying you were going to movies. She was lying because she was going to grief counseling,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and didn't want him to know. So, I mean, it's just, there's so many things hidden from characters in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a huge thematic underneath it. Peter hides the fact that he's basically a stoner and gets stoned every freaking chance he can.
He does. Yeah.
You know, I think Charlie was, hiding and lying about a lot of pain and not wanting to admit it or talk to it and everything else. And the fact that she had a demon inside her, little stuff like that.
Little stuff like that.
I thought that was cool too. I give it to Ari Aster because Payman is a real demon. That is a real genuine.
He is one
demon.
of the 8 kings of hell, according to
Yes.
Joan.
Well, he actually responds directly to Lucifer, according to research. If you look into it.
And why do you know that?
I don't know. I know these things. I drink and I know things.
Do you drink tea and little thing slips and sticks to your lip?
Hey, she had to have the special, we had to give her a
I'm
little.
telling you, there's little things in there. You're like, wait a minute. What was that?
Witch's brew, man. Witch's brew right there.
Right. This movie won a lot of awards, most of them smaller awards, but it still was nominated for a lot of awards. The Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror, the Saturn Awards, it was winner for Best Breakout Director twice. I don't know how it gets that. Maybe that's a misprint. Anyway, it won Best Breakout Director, but was nominated for Best Horror Film, excuse me, and Best Actress. But excuse me, locally, this movie won awards in Boston and Detroit And I thought I had another one in there. I think it was Chicago. Yeah, it was Chicago. The Boston Awards, it won Best Actress, it won Best Film, and it was a nominee for Best Picture and Most Promising Filmmaker. In Detroit, it won Best Actress, again, best, Toni Collette, winning everywhere. In Detroit, actually in Chicago also, it won Best Actress. Fangoria Chainsaw Awards. Now, see, this is a horror movie magazine we grew up with that I would think would be more with the times, but Fangoria loved this movie. It won Best Actress, Best Wide Release, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Kill. Wonder that had to be the kid.
It had to be the. No, I bet the kill is the cut your own head off.
No,
come on, Fangoria. Fangoria, come on.
And then lastly, it is on the 1001 movies you must see before you die list.
There we go. Is that the first one this season? That was on the 1000?
No, Aliens was on there.
Aliens is? Okay.
Right. Yeah. I can't remember if Blair Witch is on there or not, but it doesn't need to be. We can move on to keys unless you have any other trivia or anything you want to get.
No, I don't. I didn't do a lot of research on the film. I have to say now, after we've talked about it, I probably then would say this is a movie I would recommend that people watch twice.
For sure.
To get more of what he was trying to do and how he was trying to do it, rather than just the initial assault. I do agree with you that it's not for the modern horror fans who want, Saw 16 or, The Cube,
Annabelle,
or whatever else. Yeah. Conjuring, any of that. Although if you like The Witch or Midsommar, then this is a good movie. It did have a very Midsommar feel to me at the end, because it was suddenly
very pagan.
The person that you thought was the protagonist is now going to become,
right,
a part of the plot, sort of thing. That would be two of my keys, definitely, The Witch and Midsommar, for different reasons.
I have a little bit of trivia. The symbol that we mentioned that is shown throughout, it's on a necklace of the mother in the grave. The casket, it's painted on the wall above her headless corpse, and it's painted on the telephone pole that beheads the child.
It's also on the book,
a real
book of,
seal.
Memories.
Yeah, it's the real seal of the demon Payman. As shown in old text of demonology. So they lifted that direct from the source.
You're lucky they weren't cursed to hell the entire time.
There's also a lot of foreshadowing going on in this movie. I did not copy and paste a lot of the ones I saw, but I did copy and paste this one where just as Peter enters the bedroom to smoke weed with the kids at the party, they're watching a video on a laptop of someone being beheaded by a guillotine. I was like, damn, that's pretty abrupt.
Okay.
And that's, what happens because there's multiple beheadings in this movie. So we can go on to keys. I have a slew of them. So some of them are mine and some of them I lifted.
I've mentioned most of mine. So you do a lot of yours and then I'll do some of mine.
Okay. Well, we've already mentioned The Shining, which to me, there's just so many aspects of this movie that are Shining and Kubrick. But I also caught a little bit of Ken Russell in there when Charlie is looking across a field and she sees her grandmother on fire out in that field. It was like a shot from Altered States. It was just really abrupt and bright and colorful, and it reminded me of Ken Russell.
It was interesting you said that. I had Altered States, but I hadn't said Ken Russell because but it wasn't that shot. It was the heaters. It was those red heaters that she was asleep on, and then later on, Peter looking out his window across the yard to the skylight of the treehouse, and you see the heater.
Yeah.
And I
see
was
that
going,
we're on the same wavelength.
Yep. I had that.
I just mentioned earlier Haunting of Hill House for the hidden ghost that you see sometimes in the shadows in this movie. But I had Bly Manor specifically for the miniature house that Perfectly Lovely always had her little dolls set up
Oh,
in
yeah.
different rooms. I can't think
That
of her
was-
name now.
That was the Forever House, though, which was just like Hill House.
No, it was
Yeah.
Perfectly Splendid. She was perfectly splendid.
Splendid.
But she had her own little miniature version of the house.
Flora. Flora was her name.
Flora. It was Flora.
Yeah.
Rosemary's Baby is an obvious key to this movie. And Ari Aster, actually, I have a list of what all he said he drew from. He drew from Ordinary People, Ice Storm, In the Bedroom, Rosemary's Baby, Don't Look Now, which is also about a couple grieving the death of a child, Donald Sutherland and Julia Christie, and The Innocents, which is the movie based on the Turn of the Screw novel that is also a key to Bly Manor, about two children not necessarily in control of their own doings. Yeah.
I'll have to look that one up. I've never seen that one.
What?
The Innocents.
Don't Look Now or The Innocents?
The Innocents. I've seen Don't Look Now.
The Innocents I saw a long time ago, and I tried to watch it again when Bly Manor was out, and I couldn't find it streaming anywhere. But it's got Deborah Kerr in it, and it's supposedly the best adaptation of Turn of the Screw there is.
Okay.
Yeah, it came out in like the 60s, I think. It's black and white. So anyway, those were Ari Aster's, and I hope I'm saying his name right, his specific keys that he mentions himself being inspired by.
Interesting, because I was not aware of that, and yet I had Ordinary People and Ice Storm. So that was interesting.
Oh, yeah. As soon as you said Ice Storm, I was like, yeah, we're going down that trail.
And I had, I also had The Sentinel. It reminds me a lot of The Sentinel, but The Sentinel was a huge ripoff of Exorcist too. So they're very similar, but that whole really slow pace kind of things are just kind of freaky and weird here.
That's the old blind guy in the attic, isn't it?
Yeah. And then the last third of it is, holy shit, there's demons everywhere, you know, kind of thing. I got to run away. Yeah.
Well, now it's funny that you mentioned The Exorcist, because I read a lot behind the scenes of this movie. I want to know why people hate it so much and why people love it so much. And a lot of people said that it was touted as being like The Exorcist, and that it didn't end up being like The Exorcist. They were wanting those jump scares. I don't remember the advertisements for this movie, so I don't know.
I don't either. I mean, but I said earlier, I think part of my not negative, but less than enthusiastic response to it was, I've heard for so long how scary this movie is. This is a scary movie. You better be ready. And they should have just said, this is an awfully uncomfortable movie.
Right. Well,
and then it would have scared me more.
I don't know that. I mean, and this may be my fault. I don't know if I did it, but I don't know that I've ever touted that this movie is scary. I just say this movie is good. I mean, I'm like, this is a really good movie.
It's a good one.
And it fits into the category of horror. It's just the slow horror, the slow burn. Anyway, I've got Nightmare on Elm Street because of there's always like a teacher saying prophetic things in the background when you're not paying attention. In this case, I wrote it down. I mean, I copied and pasted it. Something about Agamemnon. Yeah. It's a lot of Greek mythology stuff. People rising. I'll get to it in a minute. But anyway, Nightmare on Elm Street did that with Hamlet. And we also mentioned another movie not too long ago that does it too. I can't think of what it is, but it was very similar to hearing someone talk about something in the background and realizing that it's actually foreshadowing for the current plot.
Right.
Which is really good writing. I think I like to do that.
You do? Yes.
We mentioned Midsommar. We mentioned Evil Dead because of the book. Oh, here's the one right here. Same thing with Nightmare. In Peter's first scene at school, the words escaping fate is on the chalkboard with the teacher discussing it. This is a reference to Halloween, 1978, where the main character discusses the exact same thing in class. Appropriately, this movie was released the same day as the trailer for Halloween 2018.
While Laurie is looking out the window and sees the shape.
Yeah, she is.
That's right.
She's looking out the window. And that is another movie with a classroom scene.
Yep.
Another movie Ari Aster says he was heavily influenced by, and I don't get this, but it's been a long time since I've seen it, is The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover with Helen Mirren.
Yeah, I know the movie. I don't know why he would
Peter
be...
Greenaway directed it, but it's been a long time since I saw that movie. Like
it may be the
30 years.
cinematography. That cinematography is really crisp in that movie. And there's a lot of focal
slow
shifts
pans.
in it.
There are slow pans in it
Yeah,
too.
which is similar to what he did in this. I mean, even the two pictures you've got up right now show a lot of the cinematography of this movie. Look at that lighting and the soft focus on one side and the low focus on the other. I mean, it's really his cinematographer. I did not recognize his work or his name, so I haven't seen him before, but he's brilliant in this.
Yeah. I bet you it's the same guy that did Midsommar, and it's all outdoors and bright and sunny and stuff. Yeah, it's awesome. Speaking of which, I've got one picture left there. Let's see. Dissociative identity disorder is the mental illness Annie claims her mother suffered from, DID.
Yep.
And apparently it's the same disease the lead subject in the movie Split had. I've not seen that movie.
Yeah, it's essentially what they call now split personality. What we used to call split personality is dissociative identity.
Okay. Meaning
you have a totally other personality within you. And, you know, maybe, I hadn't thought of this before, but maybe Annie's mother had those characteristics because she was carrying Payman around.
Well, from what I read online, Payman was definitely being stored in Charlie as a temporary vessel.
Right. So then she did the ritual, or she knew that it was going to be an Annie's child, but Annie's child turned out to be a girl. Now he's stored in her, so she's got to get him transferred.
And she tries to have a miscarriage. She says, "I tried to kill you."
Yeah. Another scene where you're going, don't say that to your kid. Don't. Right. You don't do that.
I know, it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I love that. I love seeing writing get under your skin, and it does in this movie big time.
Well, and to that point, maybe then Payman is in Annie once she finally snaps. And it's
I heard it had something to do with
the
death of her husband. Once he was out of the picture, she totally is.
And it's not until she cuts her head off that Payman can then jump into Peter.
Right. And then at the end, they have that really weird mock-up of like her mother and her next to each other, headless, bowing down.
Yeah.
Good stuff. That's when the horror comes in. Anyway, the only reason I mentioned that is these movies were made by the same producer, the one that did Split. So he must like DID. Another big one. Alfred Hitchcock, Psycho. You really don't realize that Charlie's kind of set up to be the lead in this movie, and they kill her off a third of the way through it.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. Although I would definitely say Toni Collette is set up to be the lead. I mean, all the way through it. I mean, from the eulogy all the way down.
Or primary character, I guess is what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I could see the kill off being a little bit abrupt. We're not used to that.
I'm going to read this because this is what I was talking about earlier. In an early scene, the subject of free will is discussed while mentioning one of the Sophocles plays. In the same vein, Ari Aster states that the Graham family has no say and sometimes lacks awareness concerning the events taking place. So apparently that's going on in the Sophocles play, Oedipus probably, because that's, all the choral stuff about catharsis and fate. He had no control.
Well, he has no choice.
Right. Exactly. And that's what I guess they're saying. And I love Greek tragedy. I've always been a Greek tragedy guy. That's just more Greek tragedy. I'll skip that. This is a very good one, and we've already talked about this. This is an A24 film, and it has very huge similarities to another A24 film entitled The Witch, which is also about a family that has no control over being tormented by a satanic force. So, I mean, there's very strong parallels, and it's very ironic that I watched both these movies on the same day.
And there's a very pseudo-ambiguous ending. There's a very final but depressing ending.
Where they both end up the bad guy.
Well, yeah, they both end up possessed. I mean, they both
Right.
end up, taken over by the evil in it.
Evil
You know,
wins.
it's kind of like, The Dark and the Wicked was the same way to me. It ended with that really, evil wins in the end kind of thing,
I just remember him killing his family and then realizing that they weren't dead already or something.
No, he sees them dead, kills himself, and then they walk.
Oh, that's right. And they're not dead. Yeah.
He saw the hallucination of them being dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then this, essentially she ends up being possessed at the end of it, So it goes along that same vein of you can't control it, of fate will, once fate is established, it is what it is,
Right.
Kind of thing.
And now we're back in Sophocles and all those plays we were talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
You reminded me of another one, and now I've forgotten it, but there was another one that has that same kind of similarity of character. No, I remember what I was going to say. I was going to say two things. One, again, I've said before, I think the movie threw me off a little bit because it didn't have enough of a horror hook, I think, at the beginning. So I wasn't sure if I'm supposed to be scared, uncomfortable, sympathetic to his family, whatever, And then I was really thrown off by Peter's reaction after the accident. And then later on, I
thought he was in shock.
Going, okay, so they did that to show how in shock he was, and so he didn't really know what to do, or they did that so that it would be artistically bizarre and odd, or they did that because he really had no control, but she even brings it up later. She goes, who does that with their own sister, and but that was, to me, the first, because Charlie's death was not the horror to me. The horror to me was the next few minutes, and then the next shot when it's the next morning and Peter's in bed awake, and you hear their reaction.
You hear her go out. Oh, I'm going to run to the store for 20 minutes. I'll be right back. Yeah.
And then she's just screaming.
And you don't
and he doesn't change other than his eyes welling up. His expression doesn't even change. It's really, really good in that respect. My notes say that scene, and then the next scene when they're getting ready for the funeral, and she's just in her room on her hands and knees wailing, and he's trying to comfort her and everything. And then she cuts to the funeral, and she's screaming. I've got in my notes, this is why they made tranquilizers.
I had the subtitles on because I want to see what I'm not hearing sometimes. And I was reading every word Toni Collette was saying. She was like, kill me. It should have been me. Blah, blah. I was like,
I don't want to live.
Fuck,
I can't live anymore. Yeah.
I can't live anymore.
Horrible. But that to me is the pain of this. I think the tagline should be,
this movie is disturbing,
or it's uncomfortable, or it's painful, and then let people get into it. But don't say it was one of the greatest horror movies in the past 20 years, because it's not really.
See, I never heard that. I didn't have the expectation that people had going into it. And I'm also the kind of guy that'll sit down and watch a foreign vampire Iranian Western that's slow and very little dialogue. And I like it because it's cool and has great cinematography. But so when I went into this, I was like, I can't remember which I watched first. I think I watched The Witch first. And I was like,
this,
wow, that was heavy. Let's watch this. And then I watched this and I was like, I just want to go crawl into a hole.
this would be a good one for, you know, after you guys have listened to us on the podcast here or watched us on YouTube, and go watch it again with what we've told you and see what you think. Because I do think you'll have a different, whether you liked it or didn't like it the first time, I think you'll have a different approach this time, a different appreciation.
Yeah, I totally agree. And look for the little things, because there's a lot of them, a lot of subtlety.
Yeah, he definitely is someone to watch. You know, I don't think he's Flanagan territory yet, but man, he's good.
He's very good. He's a totally different kind of director, though. I mean, Midsommar was a slow burn too. I mean, that movie's 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, but it's so good. I love that movie.
I love it too. And it's another movie that a lot of people hate.
Yes, well, they need to get over that and stop watching Saw.
But, you know, that's what Stephen King always said. He's like, if some people say they hate it and some people say they love it, then it's great. But if they all say one, then something's wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love this movie. I rate it highly. It's on 1001 movies you should see before you die. We are Johnny Has the Keys. We are on Facebook. We are on YouTube. If you're watching us, I have blue hair and I'm changing my background. If you are watching us on YouTube, please subscribe, like, and rate us. Join us over on Patreon if you want to hear some other shows, some free, some subscription based, including shows about Star Trek or the X-Files.
Please help us spread the word. If you see us on Facebook or social media or anywhere else, or tell your friends about us. Have them, you know, we've got quite a few episodes out there, over 100. This is 101, isn't it? Yeah, 101. So go out there and go back to the website and pick a movie that you like or one that you don't like. Maybe we'll show you how to appreciate it, you know, or maybe we didn't like it either. And if you want a little key to the season, you may have noticed that we've been doing some very strong female roles so far. We had Sigourney Weaver last week and we had Toni Collette in this one this week. There's more of that to come. So, all right. Well, I enjoyed it, David, and I will see you next week. Next week. Thank you, sir. All right. Bye. Bye.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.